Hello, good afternoon, and welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. And thanks also to our panel today, some developers, investors, and consultants looking with us at the future of retail in general. As I think we all know, retail is changing a lot. We're going to look also at the impact, in particular, of fashion retail on that debate. And then we're also going to look at the specifics of the new Europe markets in dealing with that issue, opportunizing that issue, etc. And I must remember to do this. Kicking off, when we were researching this, we put together some articles and things for the panelists to read, and one of these came up was the New Yorker, very famous global magazine, and they did a cover feature, Are Mulls Over? And of course we know that there are a lot of challenges for retail, for bricks and mortar retail, in moving into the new retail environment that we have today and will have tomorrow. Of course, we're all hoping that mulls aren't over, but it is the elephant in the room. I also have put together just a few quotes here because we did a digital revolution in real estate Insight Summit at MIPIM this year, where we discussed the more general issues affecting not only retail but also office and logistics. Now we're homing more in on retail. Obviously it's a bigger issue in retail than others. And one of the quotes there was, I don't know what retail will be like in 2025, but I do know, what I do know is that it'll be a lot different from today. And I think we all know that. It's going to change an enormous amount. It's a bigger revolution, much bigger revolution. It's going to move much faster than the Green Revolution. The question is also what it's going to look like in 2050 and 2075, because you need to start thinking about that now. You know, as the platforms for delivery, pickup, the logistics behind online retail move forward, we're going to see a lot more changes. The role of shopping centres is going to change in society. Another one is we'll start seeing how traditional retail will change once we have same-day delivery in e-commerce. It's moving so quickly that actually the e-commerce delivery systems are struggling to keep up. That was one of the big points. We had Raymond Peitzman, head of Amazon for EMEA, keynoting at the Mapic at the MIPIM event, and this was one of his big points: is that actually the satisfaction levels of delivering e-commerce are very low. There's more than 50% dissatisfaction, and that's because of the time differences, because of people, things getting delivered while people are in the workplace. A lot of things have to change. So we'll be looking at that. Also, 10 years ago, the affordability ratio was easy to calculate. Now it's much more difficult to understand. With money going off onto the cloud and various other places, how do we make that all work? We need to build shopping centres into places to be, someone said. Of course, we'll be looking very much at how shopping centres need to make themselves more of a destination. And that's an important part of it. Then some stats. In the UK, 12 to 15% of retail sales are online. They're saying in the US, for example, it's over 20. Some say 25, some say 30. Different stats everywhere you look. And much of this growth has been driven by click and collect. Well, we look at the CEE markets, where online sales as a percentage of total sales is more like 2%. So that's actually means that it's difficult for us right now to envisage and calculate the changes without benchmarking with the West. But it also means we've got more time to adapt, and that could be to our advantage. And I think that's really our main takeaway from the MIPIM event. We've got more time to adapt. Let's use that time to make this actually the strongest market in terms of adapting to online retail and e-commerce. One of the UK's most advanced and matured department stores, John Lewis, is now generating 25% of sales online and 22% sales growth year on year online. It's growing very, very quickly in the developed markets. You know, they're making it work. I know it's a slightly different model. It's a department store, but there are lessons to be learned. And this was one of the quotes that came out of there as well. How do you apportion the return from online and offline? Well, that's the elephant in the room again. the future of turnover rents. We're very interested to hear what everyone on the panel thinks of that. Conditions and CEE are very different, more developed markets, as I say, so it has more time to adapt. Those are the issues that we'll be driving at. Hang on, one last one there, I missed. Will powerful mall retailers with strong online platforms drive change by using their real estate portfolios to compete on convenience and delivery? This could change a lot of things about the way things are structured as well. So we'll be taking a look at all of these things. I'd now like to introduce you to our panel. We have Mark Barrett. He's partner for EMEA for Cushman & Wakefield Cross-Border Retail. We have Mariusz Kozlowski, not Kozlowski, as I think it says on the thing. He's a long-time board member of GTC, obviously one of the biggest retail developers and office developers in the marketplace, and he's now in charge of international retail for GTC. We have Otis Spencer, who has been one of the strongest and most active investors in various roles over the last decade or more, is currently with Peakside Capital, and who recently obviously acquired the fashion outlet portfolio. So I'm sure he's going to be very alert to a lot of the issues that are driving this. We then have Peter Todd. Peter Todd from Resolution, fresh from buying Poznan City Centre, so probably also some issues there. And he bought it from Trigranite, where we have Matthias, who is actually, sorry, Matthias, what's your surname again? Garabel. Matthias is actually replacing Arpad Torok, who was meant to be on the panel but had to withdraw at the last moment. So sorry for the lack of organisation there. But so we've got the buyer and the seller sitting together. And then we have Walter Wuffler, who's in charge of retail for CEE for CBRE. So welcome, and we'll step straight into it. First question. Mariusz, are mulls over? We saw the slide.
I have first question. How you turn it on?
Is your mic isn't on. Can we have a technical support, please?
Is it on?
Hello?
Okay.
Use that one.
Okay. So the short answer would be...
Put the mic right up to your mouth.
Okay. So the short answer would be they are not over. And the longer answer would be that we have now a digital revolution, which is impacting the business. And there's, there are many trends now being part of this revolution, such as online shopping, such as digital marketing, such as big data. And we need to see how those trends fit into the picture of mall structure. So at the end, I think malls should be reformatted the way they operate, also including the structure of leases, because as of now, I think retailers and mall owners are not on the same, not aligned in terms of business interest as landlords don't benefit from online sales of the shop, so this should somehow be addressed. Whether they will start to count footfall or other way of sharing the profits. But at the end, I think the result would be that a bigger portion of the malls would be food, would be restaurants, cafes, beauty. Fitness, because a lot of trade would go online.
We'll dig into the specifics down the line, but the general viewpoint is that malls do have a life, but there's a lot of work to do for developers. In terms of those stats that we put up on the screen there, Mark, do those ring true to you? Do you have any other stats that you can add to that about the growth of online and its impact on offline?
Effectively, unfortunately, I have to generally, when it comes to online sales, revert back to the UK. I cover the whole of Europe, but at the same time, the UK usually drives forward. It's probably the most advanced in terms of its technology, in terms of its online sales and data. We're seeing more and more online sales. It's fairly obvious to everybody in the markets that we can see that. We're seeing more and more drive towards click and collect, and I think that's going to be something that everyone needs to be embracing a little bit more. The biggest issue we have with online sales that continue to grow, it's the fact that that doesn't account for a huge amount of impulse sales from in-store purchases. I have a huge amount of international retailers that start off in the UK for the first time. My first advice to them will be to have an online transactional website. But for the UK, and I see this statistic and there's this rolling out for the rest of Europe, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to use that transactional website to start with. They actually would like to use that website to gauge the business, to gauge whether that company and that new retailer to the market is exciting enough to actually walk through the door. So we see this significantly in the UK to start with. They will judge the retailer purely on their website before they actually walk through the door, and then they will continue to buy in stores, bricks and mortar.
And Walter, sitting in the position of in the CE marketplace, and probably benchmarking quite a lot against the UK as it's positioned as one of the most advanced markets. Are there any specific stats and issues that you look at in terms of analyzing how this is going to work in CE?
Yes, of course. First of all, it's true that there is a different status in UK compared to our CE countries. For instance, I think the average amount of online sales in UK is somewhere around 13% overall, whereas in Poland we are at 4%. So there is a huge difference. But nevertheless, I think there are lots of change going on. So I totally agree to the statement. The retail environment we will see in 2025 will be totally different, but with Morse. With Morse. So we have a little bit more time to adapt in CE, but let's say first of all, the business model of the retailers is changing dramatically, and it's not only online against offline, it's more a combination of the two things. So looking at big players like Inditex, they do more than €500 million on turnover on online sales, and more than 50 or even 60% is click and collect. So it's a combination. And when it comes to Morse, I see future for the Morse, also in our region, very good future. But the spread between better Morse and not so successful Morse is opening quite fast. So I think we have to address and to think about the new structure, or let's say the next step of development in the Morse.
Okay, and before we start looking at those next steps, let's take Peter. One of the things that I read in developing this event was that there was a survey of 200 major malls across the United States, I believe last year, and they were suffering average levels of 30% occupancy, 30% vacancies, occupancy levels. No, 70% occupancy levels, 30% vacancy levels. And so what does that tell us in terms of is that all the impact of online, or are there other issues involved there? Are these issues that you're looking at as an investor and saying, is this something that we need to take note of and address?
Absolutely. First question, are malls over? Totally not. There is, I think, a structural issue in retail real estate. There's too much of the wrong type of retail floor space. Either the location's wrong, there's too much supply, or it's in formats that have been really heavily impacted by e-commerce. And I think it's not a uniform impact. Digital media, you buy it electronically. You're not going to buy it in any other format. And I think that some of the statistics that you see about how much sales has gone online, there is a bit of a distortion within that. A lot of it is service orientated, financial products, travel agency, banking, multimedia. A lot of these things have gone, and probably gone on a permanent basis, to that format. So landlords, investors, owners, developers have got a really serious job to do in terms of how they're repositioning assets. It takes an enormous amount of capex. I think the US has a slightly different dynamic. It has structural oversupply, virtually no constraints on development. They build a brand new mall, 3 blocks down the road, and just mothball the old one. So that's a bit of a distortion. But another figure, which is perhaps more interesting, there was a stat came out last week. UK high streets currently have a vacancy rate of, I think, 10.3%. That's a lot. of vacant property. A lot of it is permanently vacant. It's
What do you
structural
think is
vacancy.
causing that?
It's banks, building societies, travel agents closing down, and they're never coming back. They were on the high streets, they were in shopping malls, and they're probably gone. So it's about how you're doing that repositioning.
I would also probably just mention I act for many retailers, and there is one kind of truth that comes through all the time now. We have, if we take an example in the UK of Clark Shoes, household name, 400 stores across the UK. They're down in tiny towns and villages, and in the big cities. If we take that in comparison to Superdry plan for 90, I think they're up to 88. Plan for 90 to 100 maximum for the UK, then they're done. Years ago, they would have done the same model, hit all the small towns and villages. They just don't need to do that anymore. The globalization means instead of going to open a second shop in Hull, I'll go to Berlin. And that's a huge potential for more profitable stores in less locations.
I'd agree. Do you think that dynamic is being driven by the consumer, or is it being driven by the retailer and the retailer's strategy? Retailing's been a consolidating sector for probably the last 30 to 40 years in terms of margins being squeezed. And the retailers are going to the marginally efficient locations, so they're taking less stores, more destination-orientated stores to chase profits, and they're not opening marginal locations. I'm not sure if it's the consumer that wants that.
I do think, there's definitely an element of that. I think they also have the element of the fact that in the UK, and apologies for concentrating purely on the UK, we still have a lot of locations that do not support that kind of level of interest. I mean, if we go to towns like Dunstable or Luton, I mean, these are not places that are significant retail destinations. And I think for a lot of these places, and this is going to be, I think, a common theme across the whole of Europe, secondary and smaller towns and cities are going to continue to suffer. Unfortunately, I wish it was more positive, but there is going to still be the pressure of, if I open up in a big major city or even in a very good shopping centre with a good catchment, good population densities, that is going to be still much better and they're much more organised than going to a smaller town or city.
Although I think it's very much coming down to the strategy of the particular retailer, because we have other examples as well. For example, what Dijkman is doing right now. They believe in high numbers in case of store, and again, it will help their online sales, the click and collect, because if you like a Dijkman shoes, you look at the internet and basically the store is on the next corner, so you can pick it up easily, and then it will boost their turnover numbers as well. So, I mean, it's very much dependent on the strategy of the particular retailer.
You're completely correct, and I can't apply a broad brush across all retailers. Calzedonia Group are another one. They're targeting Germany at the moment, and they're looking at stores, towns below 25,000 inhabitants. I mean, that bucks the trend completely. But at the same time, I would say that that's becoming less common, and it is becoming more common for retailers to concentrate on the bigger cities.
Do you think there's an element of, and again, it comes back to this theme you've already identified, individual retailers and their strategy? Certainly one of the things I'm seeing in the retail space and in all the markets that we're investing in is that there seems to be a kind of aspirational, experiential, brand-driven retail format. You mentioned Superdry. And there's a value for money, convenience like Dijkman. And there seems to be quite a polarization between you're either offering the consumer an experience or you're offering them incredibly cheap goods. Yeah. And the two different retail formats have very different strategies about locations.
Well, let's just
I agree. Sorry, I agree. That means, in consequence, that there will be also retail opportunities in smaller cities. They will just look differently. It will not be this mall with experience with restaurants. It will be, let's say, the goods you need to buy. But it will be fashion. It will be others. So it will not kill everything. It will not blow it away. The retailers are interested to enter smaller cities. Some of them a good amount, but not the Superdrys of this world.
Okay, so we're talking there about the technologies that are potential allies, drivers of footfall, like click and collect, driving people onto the shop floor. And then, of course, it's your job to make sure that once they're on the shop floor, they stay there and they actually pay there rather than go away and pay on the cloud again. What other features, what are the main techniques that developers and asset managers, investors are using? We've mentioned food courts briefly there. What sorts of things, Mariusz? Galeria Mokotów, for example, their food courts undertaken huge transformation. How have you seen that? What other technologies and things can you use to drag money out of people's pockets while they're in your center?
Well, unfortunately, Galeria Mokotów is not longer ours, but it's...
Aren't you responsible for...
I'm still shopping there because we have Opis next door. Yes, I think this is the sign of times that on expansion, they did not expand the fashion part. They expanded food part on the food court. And, okay, this is a specific location where you have a lot of offices around it, so it's a destination for lunch and so on. But they I think, doubled the variety of food, and they adding all the time cafes and anything which is trendy because, let's say, social media, I think this is just a result of general trend to socialize for people, and they socialize in the malls as well. If you ask about techniques, what we're using is a loyalty program which is connected to loyalty card and also digital marketing, because we track customer behavior, we track their shopping patterns, and we adjust the marketing approach accordingly. And I think clients like to collect those points and become loyal to the mall. It all depends on the cooperation of tenants, obviously. But it's working well, even in countries you would be surprised, like Bulgaria. In Bulgaria, of course, there is no much online shopping, but people are a lot into social media and smartphones, and they're using it a lot.
Right, and what about Matthias? Because Poznan City Centre is obviously a much newer development, probably plugging much more into these things. I know, for example, there was a big effort at the beginning to get these technologies available, Wi-Fi freely available, etc. What tools are you seeing as the most effective?
Well, thanks to God that we managed to solve Poznan City Centre last year, but we're not... sorry, it was this year, yeah. This year,
but you were putting your brain behind it to make it happen. And then
no, to answering your question is that, I think the key element is that people want to belong somewhere. And today, shopping centers, or rather, I would rather call them lifestyle centers rather than shopping centers. We have to create a small society over there where actually people can feel that they belong. How we're able to do that? Obviously, we have to use the multi-channel, and we have to personalize the message, what we're sending to our customers. And this is a very hard job because we have to work very closely together with retailers, to able to send out a common message to the consumers that, look, we are here, we are a little society, you have to belong here. Whatever, you're seeking for, and it's not only shopping, and it's not only retail, but it's entertainment. It's spending your time, bringing your kid, giving value to your life. I think these are the key elements what we have to start to communicate in order to keep shopping centers alive.
Okay, and Peter, are you? Just you want to say something?
No, I just wanted to touch on that point because I think that's what we see as one of the big challenges out there. Is you've got let's say a shopping center or a lifestyle center, you've got this diverse group of tenants, and getting all those tenants on the same page to have that same uniform message. That's where we've seen some issues in terms of, I won't call it herding cats, but some tenants have their own view on how they want to communicate. So how do you get past that to make sure that you get a large cross-section of tenants participating in those programs?
Yeah, as we said that we have time until this conversion, and I know we particularly talked about e-commerce, and I got back to your point, but I don't think we have too much time because we have to start to convince tenants today. And actually, I just had a couple of meetings yesterday here in Mapic with tenants, for example, a toy store, who kind of recognized that, you know, new format of how to do shopping experience. And they are introducing a concept which is not a toy store, which is a kids' entertainment area together with a toy store. I've had another one, a bookstore, a Polish one actually, and they want to create on their space much more a cultural hub with you know, with book introductions, little shows. So put it in a more experimental level. So there is recognition, there is interest. Obviously, fashion is a little bit harder not because, you know, what can you experience in a jeans? So that's
Right,
that's a challenge.
we'll come to fashion very, very shortly. But just picking up on that, Peter, has Resolution taken a very new and advanced shopping centre and made it more new and advanced? And how have you done that? What things do you see in the future are going to be the real drivers of this change?
Yes, and we're trying to embrace all of that as far as we're able to. Marketing is really critical, and marketing through non-traditional formats. Social media is a massive
Well, can I
element
just,
of our
before
marketing.
you extrapolate on that, can I just go specifically on that? I saw a very interesting report on BBC News this morning, and it was about how social media, and it ties in with the issue of loyalty features, loyalty cards, things like that, how social media is evolving and demonstrating that actually these loyalty cards are not the loyalty of the customers, because actually customers' loyalties, people's loyalties are to things that they love, like horse riding, tennis, sport, fashion, things like that. Their loyalty, they have a very small loyalty to a shopping centre in the scheme of things. And on their Facebook page, for example, you will see now the very targeted adverts. You will see, I see regularly on my Facebook, I'm surprised, an advert comes up and it hits the nail on the head in terms of a passion I have or an interest I have, etc. I've never seen an advert for a shopping centre pop up on my Facebook page. Our shopping centres, they have to drive footfall now in the same way as cinemas do, in the same way as other destinations do. But why aren't we seeing that type of marketing? Or are we going to?
You will see more of that type of marketing. I mean, I think one of the reasons about pop-ups on computer screens, that's obviously controlled by the Googles of the world, and that says a certain amount about your browsing history, I guess, Richard, rather than anything else.
There was no porn.
But you're obviously not looking at shopping centre websites. That was the only place I was going with that one.
That's probably true.
So, yeah, that's a fact. And yeah, how can you do that? You can enhance your website. So if you're searching under certain things, it's going to be the first thing that's going to appear in a search engine. It's going to be limited what you can do in that regard. One of the things that we are trying to do is that marketing program is about trying to create and build a brand, and you have to get your tenants to engage with you. Let's go to the point that was made earlier. You never get 100% buy-in. What you have to do is you get as much buy-in as you can, you build a program and you create KPIs for that program, and then you show it to your tenants, you show it to your store managers, and you've got to have a process of a much greater level of engagement with your store managers and your tenants. And the other thing that is critically important, I've heard the expression, I'm quoting somebody else now, that it's no longer e-commerce, it's m-commerce. Mobile. People shop where they spend time, whether it's on their tablet, on their phone, in a store, or at home. You know, and they're going to make that purchase decision. So mobile technology and using push technology and how your engaging with your customers, and if you have embraced the right technology, it's relatively expensive to do, but you can retrofit it to centres. We've done it. You can actually send messages to people. You know what stores they're going to be visiting. You know how often they're in your centre. It's a little bit Big Brother-esque, unfortunately.
But also, you're going to know a lot more about your customers, aren't you?
Absolutely.
So that's an opportunity area that says, Merle's far from being dead. There's a whole new wave of opportunities down the line with knowing so much more about your customers, about their habits and behaviors in your center and potentially beyond.
Well, I think on that Mal's been dead point, you know, a lot of e-commerce, a lot of m-commerce is replacing previous non-store purchases. How many people use mail order catalogs anymore? You know, they've died. They've been replaced by the internet. So, you know, it's not all ripping sales out of stores. The store is still an integral part of the whole engagement with the consumer.
Okay, so let's move this a little bit more into the fashion area. With the fashion outlets, are you engaging in this a lot more, Otis? Are you? Let's just ask another question related to that. With fashion brands, are you seeing successful fashion brands need more space or less space in malls than they already have, or will they need a different kind of shopping center altogether?
Well, first off, just let me qualify that. We don't actually have shopping centers. We have outlet centers, which are different part of the retail strategy. You have the full price being in the shopping centers, then you've got the outlets, where what we're presenting is a value proposition that every day that the discount the consumer is going to receive is 30 to 70%. And that's what's bringing people in. So our real job is working with the retailers to make sure the footfall's there and really creating a destination that when the consumer comes there, they have a great experience. But the key point is that we're educating those tenants, is that yes, you have an outlet center, but that the staff that you have there, that they're educated, that once somebody comes in following that click and collect, that they're there and they're making other purchases and you're benefiting from that. We don't have so let's say supersize, like 1,000 square meter plus type of big boxes at the outlet centers in Poland, where our assets are, but we have seen that at other centers. I don't want to plug somebody else as development, but I've been spending a lot of time with some outlet operators in Italy, and they're creating a concept there where it's just not just the fashion, it's food, it's furniture, it's all these other things going into the outlet experience. And there, where you do have some big box, larger formats. But typically what works is your standard, similar size, but making sure you have the right inventory there and the right staff. And then the overall program to help get those consumers, the footfall to come in. And that's a challenge.
Right. Mark, in terms of dealing with the tenants, but also the center owners and high street owners, are you seeing some changes in the tenant mix as a result of the way this is working for some retailers better than for other retailers? And is that change in the tenant mix then having an effect on the visitor appeal of shopping of the shopping centres?
Yes, to a certain extent. I mean, we have with the globalization of retailers across Europe as a whole, we're seeing obviously more specialist stores, more flagship retail stores, and they are taking bigger space. I don't have many international retailers that are looking for smaller units. They're all looking for bigger units. They're all usually competing for the same size units. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that they're going to roll out the same number of stores. But they are looking for the experience stores. And the only way they can really offer that fully is with a big flagship, whether that's high street or shopping centres. We are actually, to bring this back round with the whole technology side of things, and we touched on obviously the internet sales and mail order. We actually have now in the UK a online retailer that has now taken a shop. It's gone full circle in that respect. They wanted obviously to launch online. They have a sole online presence, and now they're actually looking to take shops as a consequence of that.
We call them web-born brands.
Oh, really? I didn't know. I didn't
Yeah,
actually have a name for
web-born
them.
brands. Yeah.
But yes, and in terms of the way that malls are operating, I think if we go back to the original question, are malls dead? If we were to actually sum that up more along the lines of, are current malls dead? If they stay the same way, yes, I think they are. If they don't evolve, all malls at the moment are having to adapt to the retailers' requirements. They're driving things forward, and obviously a mall only works with the good retailers that are in there. And we're seeing a huge amount of change in what retailers want from their malls in terms of the offering and in terms of the services that they're providing, particularly leisure and the food aspects of malls. That is now one of the most important aspects. When I show retailers around a new shopping centre, that they want to know who's going to be doing the food operations there, which new food operators are opening, which leisure aspects there are.
Because they see it as a footfall driver.
They need the dwell time. I mean, gone are the days where the food court of a good shopping centre, you know, was the area at the very end, at the very top, out of the way that nobody wanted to go to. Now it needs to kind of be the heart of the shopping centre, and it drives dwell time and it drives footfall, and it's become an experience. I have retailers that regularly are able to track consumers coming into their stores with loyalty cards and see that they've been in that shopping centre for hours, and that's because it's a whole experience.
Maurice, are you seeing some tenant mix changes, some different balances of...
Yes, referring to what Mark said, one of the current buzzwords is it used to be value for money, and I think now it's value for time. And all the digital revolution is allowing customers to shop more efficiently. Now, previously, before all online choices were introduced, customers were running from one shop to another, they were trying on, they were looking for right size and then comparing the prices. Now you have this research online, shop offline, ROPO, kind of
research
behavior.
online, purchase offline.
Yes.
And
exactly.
reverse ROPO is
Yes,
research offline,
yes.
go and purchase
So
online.
at the end,
I want to avoid that.
when you have like X amount of money, X amount of time spent in the mall, more portion is spent on food and entertainment and leisure and beauty, and less on shopping, because the customer can shop more efficiently. They can come prepare or even just pick up the goods and then spend more time and then shop again and do some instant shopping. So I think it's just changing the way they shop and they stay in the mall, and it will ultimately change the format of the malls, where as we see more food, more entertainment.
Okay, now I'll just ask who wants to answer this question, because we're now going to start digging into fashion. How are fashion brands responding to this? We're talking generally how different retailers are responding, and developers and asset owners are responding. But how are fashion brands, are they doing anything differently to other brands? Are they thriving more on one technology or another? Walter, you want to take a view on that?
I will start to give my view on this. I think fashion brands, they are driving really the, let's say, omnichannel experience, because at the end of the day, if you buy fashion, you like to try it on. You don't like to get it via a mail order and to send it back and to get it again. So they try to really create an overall experience where you see, where you can prepare yourself, where you can taste online and then really buy offline, or just click and collect and you try it on again. So they are driving this. I have the impression they are driving this very strong. They invest a lot of money, not very often not aligned with what the mall owners, what the developers, what the investors are doing, because they are so focused to do this by themselves. And by doing so, I think one revolution which is going in this direction is, we all talk about the digital natives. I'm not out of this generation, unfortunately, so this is the younger guys, but now the next generation are really the smart natives. So not iPad, not computer, but really with the smartphone. So the challenge of the fashion retailers, and some of them are really starting to have a good experience on the smartphone, on the smaller screen. So really many of the big players are working on this to go this route. And I just have a personal experience to see these smart natives. I was in vacation 2 weeks ago in Morocco, somewhere, everywhere in the desert. You couldn't see any people, and if you saw one really dressed in the traditional dress, some 1,000 years old, but with the smartphone here, or playing with the smartphone. So this is really the tool. they will use, they have to accommodate. Therefore, of course, they invest a lot of money, and the alignment with the shopping center owners is a challenge. I think we have to face somehow that the overall experience we all would like to give to the customers really comes into life, to recreate footfall. Because for the time being, it's clear. Look at the Western countries. Footfall in the malls is going down, because they inform themselves online, then they go into the mall and buy. So the conversion rate is higher, the average basket is higher, but the footfall is decreasing, and we have to reverse this trend by alignment with the tenants.
And what you're saying is that in some ways fashion is therefore, the fashion brands are an ally, because they want to drive people onto the shop floor, because the online model is not exactly working out, or they haven't quite worked it out yet to their favor. They're getting very high returns, 50% level returns, which is making the model difficult. They're very keen to drive their customers onto the shop floor to actually conduct the purchase, which is good for the shopping centers. Is this what you're also sensing, Matthias?
They would be the logical ally for all of us, and we just have to, let's say, bring their interest away from their own developments and align them with, let's say, broader developments in the shopping center. However they may look like, there are some, let's say, some tests, some trends. I don't see a real perfect market standard, yes, but they would go for it because it's natural for them. They don't want to have just online sales because they are just losing money on it. So this is the case. Looking at, let's say, P&L of the online store itself, none of them is earning any money. Right. So they want to have to combine their, let's say, online business with their offline stores.
Sounds like opportunity central, more fashion retailers. Is that what you're sensing, Matthias?
Yeah, absolutely. I think fashion retailers they're cheating. They're cheating towards us because they pretend to be online. And they are online, but obviously they want to avoid all the additional costs and expenses of the delivery of extra warehouses spread around in a geographical region, because they have the stores. They already have the stores, and they have to pay rent for that. So to utilize those stores in the best, and I do have to agree with Mark. That the main fashion retailer, they want to expand because they don't want to take on these additional costs of delivery and return and extra workforce and just extra headache, but they create an online program. Here's our clothes, really nice, see it, but you can touch it in the store, and in a way. It's for us at the moment. I don't know how it's going to change. Obviously, London, very dense, very high demand for that. It's probably worth to keep up own delivery system, but CEE is not there. It's not that dense. It's not that dense, and the need, the quantity of these kind of orders or purchases is not there to keep up this cost.
And the efficiency of the system.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, you did.
And are we seeing that improving in the more developed markets?
Yeah, I mean, you did touch on that at the moment. Despite all the presence of online sales, all the ability to maybe save money by obviously less bricks and mortar, I'm still seeing across Europe huge development from established brands already. If online sales were that great and weren't that important, they would have just done that and carried on, and they wouldn't be opening any more shops. And that's definitely not the case. We have all the major mass market retailers are expanding more bricks and mortar because they need people through the door. They need impulse buy. They need people feeling their product, believing the brand, and buying into that concept and that brand, because they will not buy online if they can't see it, feel it, and touch it. I completely agree.
I think there is another factor. You put the statistic up in your original opening, Richard, that 1 in 4 consumers who clicked and collected made an additional purchase in store. It's not altruistic by the retailers. They're not doing it for our benefits, I'm sure of that. they are selling more goods by getting their customers to visit stores. They are making impulse purchases.
Absolutely.
Shoppers are more disciplined online than they are in store.
And fashion lends itself more to impulse
Totally,
purchases
it's the fashions
than
that are
other
driving
product
that.
types.
Absolutely. And it's
Absolutely.
not just the click and collect side, they're also encouraging their consumers to visit stores for returns. I mean, it's something like 90% plus of returns are made in store. You're taking something
they
back,
may
it
drive
doesn't
more
fit,
sales.
it's the wrong colour, and then you buy something else. It's an issue for landlords. You create your leases and you link online and offline. An awful lot of stuff that's sold online gets returned in store. That's a minus for the landlords. You've got to be quite careful.
Yeah, they're quite clever at that, aren't they?
I think one of
What
the
do you think, Murray?
one of the reasons that big retailers are increasing their floor space is the increase in the number of product they sell and the number of segments they're reaching. If you go back to 10, 20 years ago, most of those guys like the Inditex or H&M, they were selling probably just clothing. And they went into accessories, they went into shoes, they went into fragrance, they went to home. So they're reaching more products and reaching more segments. So at the end, they have to take more floor space. They increase their dominant position a little bit on account of smaller players. So when we talk about larger formats, I think it refers more to those big guys, big retailers who are just increasing their product and reaching different segments.
But aren't the retailers putting more of the pressure on the landlords? That's how they're able to expand, because a lot of the risk and cost, they're shifting to the landlord from fit out, contributions, all these other aspects of it. Do you see that as well?
Yes, definitely. The stronger they are, the
More risk they can put to the landlord.
Exactly, and I think today it's happening to the extent that it may limit potential supply, because at the end, if you run your business plan and then you have to spend money on cinema, which is not making money, and then on the main anchors, they're so aggressive that you don't make much money, and then usually you were increasing the rents for smaller guys, and they cannot afford to pay it anymore, because the big guys, they have lower occupancy costs, they have a bigger economy of scale in terms of production and product delivery. So I think it has to be balanced, and
But that's not a new element, unfortunately. It was
reaching,
always there.
It's reaching kind of dangerous point where you are against the wall, and it's not.
No, but this is why we're saying that the life of a mall or the future of malls may be challenged for new malls because of some of these issues. And then we've seen some of the other malls where they've lost that battle, that those are going to be repositioned into something else. I mean, it's one of the things that we're looking at buying right now is a shopping center where we've seen the occupancy go down below 70%. So there's an angle to go in, get it cheap, and reposition it for something else.
Yeah, I think there would be more of a complementary strategy rather than competition, and it will happen that one mall will be fashion and trendy, the other mall will be family and home oriented, and I think going a little bit lower with the pricing and the positioning of the brand.
Yeah. There probably are some malls that have no real future, though. I mean, they could be dead. I mean, there will be some that just fail.
Well, picking up on that issue, how does all of this affect the designing of the future mall? Are you taking all of this on board, extrapolating all this information into your thoughts on how the future mall should look like design-wise, that may make, capitalize more on these issues that are opportunistic and debar a lot of the issues that, for example, showrooming can be a good and a bad thing. And Mark was saying when we were talking yesterday, that some developers, I guess they're pretty nervous or very fearful or don't want to innovate. You were saying that some developers actually, or asset owners are putting an embargo on showrooming in their centers. First of all, is this a good idea? Secondly, how do you measure that? And thirdly, is that something that's going to come into the design side later?
Yeah, I do have a few experimental, shall we say, retailers, some innovative retailers that know that their product isn't going to be the most profitable from that store, but that what they're looking to do is showcase it, and by doing that as kind of like a showroom almost. Here is the product, feel it, touch it, go home and buy it. We've got a limited amount of product here on the floor. The rest of it, it's just the same price online. Go back, you can do that yourself. And that obviously massively affects turnover. It keeps turnover incredibly low. Turnover rents obviously have an impact as a result. And I have seen, I've had conversations with a few developers they're nervous that this is obviously something that might roll out more extensively, with more retailers saying, come, look, feel the product, go back and buy it online.
Even more, sometimes they say, come into the shop, I'll help you buy it online here with the iPad or so. This is going on. But I think at the end, finally, the decision or the layout and the future of the malls will be driven by the consumer. So if the consumer accepts and likes this format, look at electronic stores. In the past, they were 6,000, 7,000, 4,000 square meters. Now there are concepts with 300-400 square meters, exactly where you can look and feel, or you get the information, and then you buy it there in the shop. And get it delivered or pick it up. So if the consumer, let's say, supports this trend, I'm afraid it's very difficult to prevent it happening.
I think that's impossible to reverse, though. I mean, we're certainly seeing it across shopping centres we own, even relatively new ones, where one of the things, particularly with the fashion side, you're seeing more large stores and slightly less inline units. Typically, as a landlord or as a developer, you're going to put a higher rent ticket on the small inline guys, you're going to see less of them going forward. We're already having to agglomerate units to create big space for the new formats. There's a financial impact and consequence. You've got to factor that into your underwriting. You've got to be in a position to keep investing that capex into changing these formats. And then you've got to try and be creative about what you're going to do with difficult, large numbers of small inline stores, pop-up shops. Concepts like Box Park appear here. There's all sorts of new formats that you can try and grab to capture, some kind of vibrant retail offer for your consumers. That's what you have to do as a landlord.
If I were to, just my faith in human ingenuity says that not only are you guys going to be trying to look at ways that you can wedge the waterfall, so to speak. But actually, you're going to be looking at ways to really use those things and drive and innovate and actually turn this into your favor in the end. At the moment, of course, there's a big question mark whether this all suits the model of turnover rents and whether turnover rents will be sustainable in that model.
Maybe it will change to footfall rent.
Footfall rent, could be.
Actually, it will force retailers to be more efficient. So once they get customer into the shop, they want to increase their satisfaction, fulfillment, and I think they're using now a lot of digital.
Has anyone done footfall rents anywhere else in the world?
Not that I'm aware of. I'd like to
Have
see
you
it tried.
copyrighted that?
No, I read that somebody was trying to introduce it, but I think retailers are using more and more digital instruments to increase the fulfillment of customers and allow them the way they can find the shop on the digital kiosk in the mall. The same way they're looking for products inside the shop and then increasing their efficiency of shopping.
But once we really start this idea of footfall-oriented rents, and I think it could be one step into the future, the discussion will immediately start that a retailer located on a not very favorable place says, "Hi, why should I pay the same footfall-oriented rent than an anchor placed near the entrance?" So for this, I think we have to be prepared to have the systems really the footfall in the region of the tenant. So I think it would be a logical step into the future. The implementation might be quite challenging, so there has to be some thought into it because this discussion is inevitable.
We add to all of our centres footflow counters that do individual store counts.
Yes.
And then we don't do footflow rents, but for instance, you're having a discussion with a tenant about their performance. We've got the statistics. We can say you had this many customers last week, the same week last year you had that number. This is what's happening in the mall. This is what's happening in your store. If you're not performing, it may not be us.
It's not our shopping centre, it's your product and your service.
Yeah.
That needs to be addressed. Let's move on to New Europe now. We've looked sort of generally at how things are working. And how can, and obviously we want to know how Europe can learn from that and move forward on that. Which fashion brands are looking to enter the new Europe markets in the future, and what are the most attractive locations and why? Do you want to pick that up first, Walter?
Yes. What was the question?
Which fashion brands, so we know which fashion brands are here already. We know, let's just say, recap, we know that Prague is probably the strongest luxury retail market in CEE. For some bizarre reason, Budapest and Bucharest have stronger luxury fashion retail and retail markets than Warsaw. Is this going to change? What are the destinations? And most importantly, are there any new brands looking to come in and
yes, and
bring in their expertise?
Normally, there is some kind of logical order. Because at the time, for the time being, still looking into Western Germany, Western Europe, Germany is a big driver. So the normal thing is Germany, Austria, Prague, Czech Republic, and then further east or southeast, or directly into the big Russian market, where the presence of brands is much higher than everywhere in CE. So out of the real biggest brands, there may it be luxury, may it be aspirational, may it be other mass market brands, the presence is much higher in the Russian market, yes, yet. So brands are looking into the countries, but very few, let's say, upfront of these Western European hubs like Germany and Austria. Brands are looking maybe directly into the CE markets from Turkey and from these regions. They tried the other way around, or even from the Arab countries. They say, or Greece in the past. This is more, let's say, correlated to the way the customers feel and do business. So there are lots of retailers looking at the CE countries, unfortunately not enough entering it, because in CE we have the same situation in many malls now as we have in Western Europe. They are too uniform, they are too standardized, the tenant mix is the same, the big brands are increasing their spaces, so really to bring the spice in and to bring the flavor in, this is the challenge in CE, as in my opinion it's also the challenge in many Western European malls, maybe apart from UK market and London market in particular.
I would say, yeah, just in terms of, to give a bit of an overview of where retailers are moving at the moment. Obviously I speak to a huge amount of them and they're all moving around in various different countries. The focus is always, at the moment, Germany. I have a huge amount of interest in Germany. The perception is the safest market in Europe. If you've got capital to invest in a new country, you know, Germany's considered to be a safe bet.
But it's not on our patch.
It's not on your patch. I'm afraid then obviously France and obviously Western Europe. And then often Poland and Czech Republic. I completely agree that's usually the safest markets going further down south. I often get asked by a lot of retailers, by a lot of countries, whether, you know, will Romania become the next target for Promark? The short answer is no, I'm afraid not. Unfortunately, if for that region, you have to kind of look to your neighbours first of all. It isn't going to be somebody from the UK making their first shop outside the UK, being Bulgaria or Romania. It's much more likely to be from Turkey or from the Arab states, as you said, coming through that way. But I see a huge amount of retailers moving further south from Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and it's just a natural progression to keep going.
But what about brands like, I mean, why don't we have a DKNY shop in Warsaw, for example? Are these level of brands beginning to sniff our markets?
I would mention that in terms of the luxury element, luxury retailers as a general, they like historic cities. You know, they do not like box units. Louis Vuitton do not like shopping centres. So the reason why Prague, as a starting point for luxury retailers, it's beautiful old city. You know, it's fantastic. And then you obviously have Budapest and Bucharest. You know, these are the locations. Whereas obviously, unfortunately, you go to Warsaw, and whilst there is a beautiful downtown, it is still dominated by malls, and that is an issue for luxury retailers. And that's I just wanted to.
This is true. You see, there is a long way to go in Bucharest, but there is at least the fashion street evolving slowly. Looking back to Vienna 20 or 30 years ago, for Warsaw, I would hope that finishing now the metro reconstruction will lead to a little bit of a shopping street. Of course, the ownership structure and everything is very complicated, but we are, let's say, optimistic that during the next 3 to 5 years, there might be also a development of a real high street market in Warsaw. Because looking into Budapest, looking into Prague, and also at the edge of CE, looking into Vienna, the rents, the money, the conditions, the same tenants which are challenging us in the shopping centers are able to or willing to pay. It's incredible. You know, you're sitting with the same tenant one day trying to find a location in a high street in Prague for him, and they are willing to pay amount of X and additional key money and so on, and next day discussing with a center owner on turnover rent only and tenant allowances. So it's the spread, it's the location, and of course the high street is a driver as well as very well placed shopping malls that they are willing really to share the profit in a different way, let's say.
And I think, you know, tenants are, there is a great demand in Eastern Europe for those tenants who are actually built a very impressive, strong image around themselves, and you know, they are for youngsters. They're using all the multi-channel, and it can be felt that you know, Abercrombie & Fitch, Superdry, Uniqlo, you know, they're really slow in expansion, but there is a very high demand to get these type of tenants into our shopping centers, into the high streets of the capitals of these cities, because, you know, this have a very, you know, strong positive image towards the customers.
I think the reason the high street is so developed in Budapest and Prague is that those cities grew around the old town, while in Warsaw, old town is completely off-piste. So normally high street lives of tourists and food restaurants and so on, and cafes, while in Warsaw, tourist destination is completely off-piste, and the real high street is in a different location.
Well, there's also historical reasons for that, isn't
Yeah,
there? I mean,
yeah.
Warsaw at one stage was just literally a pile of bricks. And had to be rebuilt and remodeled, and of course it wasn't rebuilt and remodeled under a private capital markets consumer society. It was built, you know, in the artificial conditions of under communism.
Headquarters of the party.
Yeah, and so they had different priorities. So the question is whether over time, and certainly you see in Warsaw the redevelopment of Krakowskie Przedmieście going up to the old town, you're really beginning to get a sense of high street in Warsaw, which was missing for a very long time.
Well, in Warsaw, I think Plac Trzech Krzyży is a little bit of Plac Vendôme, and
It's about the closest it gets, yeah.
Is Rue de Montagne.
Yeah. And another point here is CEE has, I think we all acknowledge, more scope for growth and shopping center density, and also rising levels of disposable income, more than developed markets. Will this slow down the pace of change in CE compared with elsewhere, or speed it up?
The change in what sense? What do you mean?
The pace of change in terms of adapting to the digital revolution.
I think, see, that's one of the most exciting
Innovation.
aspects about the market that we operate in, being New Europe, as you call it, is that the quick adapters, and you see the penetration as it relates to e-commerce, or m-commerce, as you're calling it, Peter. But no, it makes it a very interesting place. The challenge that we have is bringing in some of these more aspirational brands, bringing in these top-tier fashion retailers. That's where we're struggling a little bit. But I think the interest is there, the energy's there. We just need to grow that occupational market.
I'll keep you going on this question. We're wrapping up now. Do investors, Otis, being an investor yourself, do you think you have more of an eye on the investment challenges that this revolution is generating, or more of an eye on the brighter returns in tomorrow? Which, like, are you seeing that this is all good for retail, investment, or are you seeing investment headaches to try and cope with all of this? Which is the balance of your...
I see both. I mean, there's some challenges right now. We're talking about getting tenants on the same page to contribute towards marketing and whatever else, and that footfall. But at the same time, I see it's a great opportunity because people are going to continue to consume. Retail as an asset class is going to be attractive. A lot of capital is coming into that area and will continue to come into it. And at the end of the day, retail investments are much safer investment for investors than, let's say, office or even warehouse distribution. If you've got that dominant fortress center, it's a moneymaker. I mean, what you guys created there and then sold out of in Warsaw, that is going to continue as long as you adapt. You're going to make money with it. If you have convenience retail, you can also make money with that. In value retail, you can make money, but it's that getting through this challenge right now of dealing with the quite demanding tenants. That's
So I was just going to say, I agree with Otis. I think that there is a great deal of opportunity if you are, and what Otis was describing, similar, I believe, to our strategy. We're a very proactive investor. We invest a lot of capex in renewing, refreshing, re-merchandising our centres all the time. I think where it's a real challenge is more historical centres, rather tired formats, investors who, for whatever reason, have not been willing or able to put in the capex to replace. They will be looking at, dwindling income streams, more and more challenges, and the need for a lot of investment. So they've got challenges ahead of them. If you can stay on the front foot, you can embrace these changes, then it's an opportunity.
And it requires a different math when we start to calculate ROIs, because we're talking about the experience, increasing dwell time. Today, leisure entertainment is averaging 8-9% in the shopping centre. In the future, if you want to go there and if you want to attract people, it have to go up to 20-25. Now, leisure retailers don't pay rent. So you got to do the right calculation that from where are you going to bring back that what you've lost on rent. And here comes the question where it's going to be fruitful or where we're going to change the whole math. That's a challenge. That's what we have to break our brain on.
Certainly, if you look at the US and you look at the sort of model they had there, where they've got that kind of 25% leisure space and low rents, they've driven an awful lot of mal income. Effectively, it's mobile retail, it's kiosks, it's pop-up concepts, it's selling kind of advertising rights. It's generating alternative income streams from the fact that you've got footfall, and that's how you try and bridge the gap.
I'd just like to chime in at that point that something that all retailers generally hate.
Unfortunately, landlords do need to
don't get
make
me wrong,
money
but
too.
yes, more lettings.
And they make limitations in front of their stores big time.
Yeah, I think one simple conclusion will be that let's say that the supply will be lower out of this. It will take some time to change the total mass. So I think for the next years the redevelopment issue will be more on the table than really the lot of new malls coming up. Of course there are exceptions, but basically speaking, I think this we will see.
Good. Anybody else have any burning issues and burning questions? Because I think we've covered most of the areas. Can I throw questions quickly out to the floor? Does anyone have any burning questions or points they want to raise or ideas that they can contribute? No, it looks like we answered everyone's questions. Which is
we
good.
bored them to death. There's a question there. Yeah.
Have we got a question?
No.
No, it was a phantom question.
Okay.
Great.
He's
got
has
it?
a question, yeah.
Go ahead, stand up. Okay. I was in and out, so I am not sure that my question will be totally in vain.
Can we get a microphone to the gentleman, please?
We can hear it.
Yeah.
Can everyone hear it?
Go ahead.
Take it.
Better be a good question.
Thank
Is
you.
nobody providing microphones for the...
No, that's fine. That's
guests?
fine. That's fine.
Okay.
In any case, my question is so silly that I prefer nobody to hear it. So, to me, if you ask me what entertainment and experimental something is, I would say, I would go with a guitar below the balcony of a beautiful girl and sing a song, and then we'll spend the night in the trees in the bush watching the giraffe, and then we'll go, etc., etc. You see what I mean? And since I am in Mapic, I always hear that experience and adventure means going to a shopping mall and finding some, let's say, exhibition which will keep me longer, so that at the end I will have to buy a hamburger because my mom is already in bed. So I have nothing against that. I understand and I appreciate all what I heard during 2 days. But still, I think that if you mean business, you must also be able to confront this childish question, this candid question, this question which we all have in mind and we never dare to phrase.
Well, just picking up on one point there, I absolutely think that malls, shopping centres, whatever you like to call them, are going to move in the direction of becoming, fantastic experiences, primarily, expeditions, adventures, things happening everywhere all the time. That's going to be the future, and when you've got people doing that, that's when you stimulate the impulse buys around that and the retail opportunities around that. That's the future. I personally think, from what I see, the mall of the future is going to be so different from what we think its role is today in terms of the way it looks, the way it's shaped, and the way that it works. The analogy I draw is the guy sitting in a carriage, in the horse-drawn carriage in the 18th century, had no idea we were going to be putting a buggy on a comet. He had no conception that that was even possible. And I think that's kind of what we're going to see if we look across the next 50, 100 years of the future of shopping. Anyway, thank you very, very much for joining us. Don't run away, because we have a cocktail right now, so you can eat and drink and be merry. Just to wrap up here, have we got our slides for the end, please? Whoops. I'm just going to, this is also the launch of Ceeqa 2015. The awards entries launched today. Ceeqa, for those of you who don't know, is, I think most would describe it as the primary market insight platform for the New Europe sector, and also the main industry awards organized in partnership with the Financial Times and supervised by Deloitte. It covers 18 countries across New Europe. Today we launched the awards entries, so put your entries in. The deadline for the awards entries is 20th of November. No, 20th of November is the launch. 20th of January 2015 is the deadline for entries. On the 11th of March, we announced the shortlist and also the winners of the Real Green Awards. We have 4 Real Green Awards at Ceeqa at MIPIM, which is similar to this. It's a bit bigger at MIPIM, and we have quite a nice event there, so do join us for that. And then on the 14th of April, we have the winners of the awards are announced at the Ceeqa Gala, which is a very enjoyable gala dinner and entertainment evening. We have about 650 guests coming across from more than 40 countries to join us. It's certainly well worth doing. I shouldn't be telling you this, but it is a bit of an attraction. We haven't actually fully signed the deal yet, but the entertainment at the gala will be Bonnie Tyler for next year. She'll be the lead entertainment. Obviously, there'll be much more entertainment. So I hope you guys will join us for that. And I just want to thank quickly our sponsors and partners for supporting us this year. We will have a few more coming on soon, but Colliers, Jones Lang, or JLL, Skanska, Halaba, Knight Frank, Panettone Europe, and Denton's, our premium partners. We also have Heitman, Trigranite, Prologis, Bank Zahodny, VVK, Cushman & Wakefield, PBB, CBRE, Arcadis, Strabag, Peakside Capital, and Norton Rose Fulbright. And we also have our industry partners, MIPIM, Mapic, GRI, RICS, Europe Real Estate, WBJ Observer, Doing Business, RO, and Monitor Magazine. And of course our delivery partners. So we're looking forward to another great Ceeqa campaign. We hope you enjoy it. We hope you all do well. In the meantime, please do come and join us for a cocktail to wrap up today's events. And thanks very much indeed to all of our panelists for joining us.